Exposed my brother's girlfriend's elaborate web of lies about her identity and past, shattering their relationship and risking his sobriety. My younger brother, Adam, had a rough childhood, to say the least. Our father passed away from cancer when Adam was just a kid, not even 10 years old. Our mother, well, she's likely bipolar, but her narcissistic tendencies and outright abusiveness color every memory I have. I'm older than Adam by a decade and always tried to do what I could for him, but if I'm honest, I failed him more often than not, never fully grasping what he needed. When Adam started spiraling into alcoholism, no one was surprised, not even me. It felt almost inevitable. A few years ago, he hit rock bottom with a terrible incident that landed him in the hospital, but that dark moment was the catalyst for his recovery. He's been over 2 years sober now, a feat I'm convinced he pulled off largely because of the new relationship he started soon after his incident. He found someone remarkable, a kind-hearted, lovely woman I'll call Eve. The first time Adam brought Eve over to meet the family, I was a little wary, protective, but she immediately won us all over. Eve makes gifts for my kids and brings treats, and her quirky sense of humor fits into our family like she was always meant to be there. As I got to know her, I learned about her own traumatic past. She opened up about so much pain, how she lost her twin brother in high school and was always treated as less than by her family, overshadowed first by the twin, and then by a brother who died serving in Iraq. She talked about never, ever being able to gain her mother's approval or attention. Over those conversations, Eve and I bonded deeply over the sting of never feeling wanted or good enough. She told us she was originally from Scotland. Her father was a sheep farmer who, enchanted by cowboy movies, moved them all to Oklahoma to run a cattle farm. That gave Eve dual citizenship, she said, and because of her background, she told us she spoke 16 languages. She worked at a college and claimed to have multiple degrees. She seemed super well educated, proper, genuinely nice, and, most importantly, she took excellent care of Adam. Sometimes, after visits with her family, she'd even slip into a Scottish accent. It wasn't until she began sharing stories about her past relationships that I started to get confused. 3 divorces, she said. One from someone who transitioned genders, another from someone who died by suicide, and the last, a harrowing story of attempted murder, ended with her ex shooting her and then dying in a police chase. She even showed my kids the scar. 2 years went on like this. I was convinced she was such a great fit for Adam, so when they hit a rough patch last week and had a major argument, I tried to be supportive. I had Adam come over to talk, and he admitted he was struggling. Eve had lied to him about not speaking to a particular friend, a popular guy from her alleged high school days. She didn't want to accept the guy was bad news, she said, insisting she just wanted to believe someone was good after everything she'd been through. Adam wanted to move past the lying, and I wanted so badly to help him do that. I talked to my husband about it, and he immediately asked the simplest question: how could she have a local high school friend if she was raised on a cattle farm in Oklahoma after coming from Scotland? The contradiction unsettled me. With my PTSD, I often question my memory or logic, so I brushed off the feeling, convincing myself I just misremembered details. But the doubt nagged at me. For days, the question kept turning in my head. One night, while my husband was playing video games, I gave in and decided to do some digging. I started by casually Googling Eve's name, and up came her address. Oddly, every address associated with her was in America and went back years. There was no evidence she'd ever lived in Scotland. I checked her parents as well. Their records showed they'd never left America, even before she was born. Now thoroughly puzzled, I searched for her grandparents' obituaries and found recent entries. All born, lived, and died in America, with zero mention of extra children, only listing 3 kids ever. I got even more curious and looked up her high school. She'd lived at the same Kansas address her whole life. The local high school's yearbook listed her as a senior, but there was no twin, not in her senior class, not in 9th grade, nowhere. With every rabbit hole I went down, I found more proof of her lies. Only 2 marriages were on record, both exes alive and well. One had transitioned genders, which lined up with her story, but that seemed to be the only piece of truth she'd ever told. At this point my husband insisted I had to tell Adam. I hesitated, not wanting to hurt him, but eventually, as the evidence stacked higher, I agreed. I decided this needed to be revealed face to face, but my husband pushed me to share it right away, so I compiled everything I'd found into a document and sent it to Adam. I asked some clarifying questions about the twin and the ex-husbands, apologized for what I was about to share, and hit send, hoping beyond hope I was wrong. Within 10 minutes, Adam replied. Eve had admitted to everything. Every single lie. He was absolutely shattered. 2 entire years of trust obliterated in moments. I couldn't believe it. Why had she done this? If they'd married, her lies would have unraveled so fast. Now I realized she'd even kept him away from her family by allowing them to disrespect their age difference. He's noticeably younger, and by refusing to attend family events, like an uncle's funeral earlier this year, on the grounds her uncle was a predator. I hate myself for even thinking this, but maybe she just didn't want Adam to find out her uncle, and the rest of her family, were all born and raised in Kansas, not Scotland. I remember Eve sitting in my living room, telling wild stories and letting my kids feel the bullet wound scar from something that, apparently, never happened. There are no criminal records for either of her exes, and none for her. The entire web was fiction. I wish I could put the cat back in the bag. I wish I'd asked questions sooner, looked up her background before things got so woven into our lives. I'd check out the teenagers my kids date, make sure their parents aren't on any registries. Why didn't I do the same for Eve? Now the fragile family Adam and Eve were building is just gone, in ruins, and I'm terrified this heartbreak will be the thing that pushes Adam back into old habits. The guilt is eating away at me, not just for looking up Eve, but for telling Adam. Did I do the right thing? All I know is that he's left in pieces, and I can't stop replaying what I could have done differently. Later, in the midst of my spiraling thoughts, I considered her education. Her degrees, at least, seemed to have some truth. She did work at a college for a while and then as an engineer. I know that sometimes colleges allow their employees to take classes for reduced prices, so it's possible she really did earn some of those degrees. She talked about being a polyglot. I have a friend who's learning Japanese, and he've always discussed tutors and language programs with authority. It all sounded believable at the time. She's old enough for 3 divorces. It just sounded like a story of tragic luck and maybe bad judgment, which, coming from a background of trauma, made me want to give her extra grace. I truly believe she'd just been targeted for being too nice. It's humiliating, realizing how gullible I was. There's no way to escape the pain of having to explain this to my oldest when they come back from their trip next week. My oldest is so fond of Eve. I know this is going to hurt, and I have no better explanation than my own naivete. I wish I could take it all back, but all I can do now is stand by Adam and hope I haven't broken him for good. It took me around 4 to 5 hours, so much time just connecting family members and addresses, all to track down the right obituaries and details. I went through all this for both sides of her family. The yearbooks made it tricky, since they're saved a page at a time and you have to manually flip through each one. I'd always jump to the last page, then scroll forward to the index, scanning for the list of places she'd been pictured. I noticed something interesting. She had no evident siblings, at least none with the same last name in the yearbooks. I ended up scrolling page by page, hunting down the class photo to get the link I needed to attach for him. Digging through the court records was a massive time sink on its own. Not only did I have to register for access, but I also had to open every single file to see what they contained. The state case numbers meant nothing to me, so I couldn't even skip ahead. I had to check each one. The entire process was long and detailed, and every step depended on the last, but I couldn't help getting drawn deeper and deeper into it. Update 1. My brother, Adam, had been dating his girlfriend for 2 years when I started uncovering a web of lies more elaborate than anything I'd ever imagined someone could manufacture. The story started to unravel with bizarre tales. She told Adam she once had a twin who died traumatically. She talked about an older brother who never existed. There were stories of 2 ex-husbands who, it turns out, are very much alive and never married her. She spoke of a tragic loss of a child, and even invented an ex-fiancé just for the drama. She described an assault that supposedly happened during their relationship, using it to manipulate and control Adam. There were also claims of multiple degrees and the ability to speak 16 languages. When I finally pieced together enough of her fabrications, I collected my proof, screenshots, texts, anything I could find, and forwarded it to Adam. The truth was undeniable. She came clean pretty much immediately and even took him to see her parents to explain all the lies. That's when we found out she has untreated borderline personality disorder. Adam, for all his flaws, and, as a recovering alcoholic with a heart of gold, he has a few, was adamant that he wasn't going to toss her aside for being human. He convinced himself it was the righteous path, that he was noble for not abandoning someone so deeply troubled and damaged when they needed help. My husband and I resolved to support him, no matter what. Our love for Adam runs deep. The girlfriend declared she could never be around us again and claimed she was terrified of us. We assured Adam nothing would change on our end. We'd always be polite and welcoming to anyone he dated. It didn't stick. I truly think the realization that her plan to isolate Adam wasn't going to work, that we weren't going to play the role of antagonists in her story, shook her. After a dinner where we wrapped Adam in unconditional support and reminded him, over and over, that he was the victim in all this, her hold on him began to slip. It lasted 1 more week. The following week, she told Adam she was going out to a bar with friends. Given her history and the way all this began, with her lying about spending time with some jerk who had zero respect for Adam or their relationship, he understandably asked where she was going and with whom. Instead of answering, she bristled. She told him she shouldn't have to prove anything to him, that he was the one impeding her healing. She tried to flip the narrative. She was the victim, he was controlling for asking for transparency. But Adam finally reached his limit. He told her he couldn't be in a relationship with someone he could never trust, especially given how obvious it was she was hiding something. Her answer? She handed him a 30-day notice to move out. So now, my family is gearing up to help Adam transition into his own place this weekend. He's hurting. Anyone would be after 2 years of lies with someone you thought you'd marry. But our support system is strong, and I know in my heart Adam will get through this. He's even quitting smoking in the middle of all this chaos, which impresses the hell out of me. If it were me, I'd probably be chain smoking, but he's determined. If I learned anything from this, it's not to let yourself be blinded by wild stories, no matter how good they sound. And if something feels too good to be true, it probably is. She once convinced us she was a dual citizen with Scotland and claimed fluency in every language from that region and a few obscure ones for good measure: Scottish, Gaelic, German. Oddly, never Spanish, since we'd have caught her immediately. She must have memorized phrases because, when pressed, she'd just recite something that sounded vaguely appropriate, and the kids would get her to say a cuss word in some language and the conversation would move on. I wish I had demanded the full list, but back then, it all just seemed like quirky fun facts. Looking back, I sometimes beat myself up for the part I played in exposing her lies. Sneaking around for proof felt wrong, but Adam didn't deserve a single bit of what happened to him. He's heartbroken but handling things far better than I expected. I'm doing everything I can to make his move as stress-free as possible. Sometimes breaking the bad news makes you feel like the bad guy, even when you're trying to save someone you love from a disaster. All I want now is for Adam to be okay. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since Adam moved out, and I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. Last Friday, Adam called me in a panic. Eve had been texting him nonstop, over 200 messages in 2 days, alternating between desperate apologies and furious accusations. She claimed she was pregnant with his child and threatened to expose the truth about his family if he didn't come back. The pregnancy claim sent Adam spiraling. Despite everything, part of him still felt responsible for her. I convinced him to ask for proof, a doctor's visit, anything concrete. She sent him a blurry photo of what looked like a positive pregnancy test, but when he asked to go to an appointment with her, she suddenly became evasive. She needed time to process and space to heal before involving him. The contradictions were already starting. Then Tuesday happened. I was picking up groceries when I spotted Eve in the parking lot, very obviously not pregnant, laughing and getting cozy with some guy I'd never seen before. My heart sank. I quickly snapped a photo and sent it to Adam with a simple message: at the grocery store on 5th Street. Thought you should know. Adam confronted her immediately. At first, she claimed the guy was just a friend helping her through this difficult time. But when Adam pressed harder, asking specific questions about the pregnancy, everything unraveled again. She admitted she'd lied about being pregnant but insisted it was because she was so scared of losing him that she'd do anything. The guy in the parking lot? Her ex-boyfriend from before Adam, the same one she'd claimed was emotionally abusive and completely out of her life. But here's where it gets worse. Adam discovered she'd been seeing this ex the entire last month of their relationship. Those nights she claimed to be with girlfriends? She was with him. The bar incident that triggered their final fight? She'd been there with the ex, and when Adam asked for transparency, she panicked because she couldn't provide it without exposing herself. Adam was devastated all over again, but this time something was different. Instead of that broken, guilt-ridden person I'd seen 3 weeks ago, there was anger. Real, justified anger. He'd been manipulated, gaslit, and cheated on by someone he genuinely loved and tried to help heal. The ex-boyfriend situation explained so much. Why she'd been so adamant about Adam not meeting certain friends. Why she'd create stories about dangerous exes to justify cutting people out. Why she'd been so threatened by our family's continued support. We represented stability and truth, everything her house of cards couldn't withstand. What's eating at me now is wondering how much of her mental health struggles were genuine versus another layer of manipulation. Adam's been researching borderline personality disorder, trying to understand if her behavior was illness or calculated deception. I think it might be both, which makes it harder for him to process. The silver lining? Adam's been throwing himself into building his new life. He's got a small apartment he's actually excited about, he's 2 weeks cigarette-free, and his sponsor says he's handling this crisis better than anyone expected. He even started seeing a therapist to work through the trust issues this whole experience created. Eve's been radio silent since the confrontation about her ex, which honestly makes me more nervous than the constant texting did. People like her don't just disappear, they regroup. Adam changed his locks and blocked her on everything, but I can't shake the feeling this isn't over. My husband keeps reminding me that we did the right thing, but watching Adam rebuild his sense of reality after 2 years of systematic lying is heartbreaking. He questions everything now, whether people are telling the truth, whether he can trust his own judgment, whether he's worthy of honest love. I just hope the next woman who comes into his life appreciates the incredible person he's fought so hard to become. Update 3. I should have known the silence wouldn't last. It's been 6 weeks since Eve disappeared from Adam's life, and honestly, I was starting to believe we dodged a bullet. Adam was doing well, really well. He'd been going to therapy twice a week, his apartment was finally feeling like home, and he'd even started talking to a woman from his AA group. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and long conversations about recovery. For the first time in months, I was seeing glimpses of the man my brother used to be before addiction, before Eve, before all the chaos. Then last Wednesday, everything went sideways. I was at work when my phone started buzzing with calls from Adam. When I finally picked up, he sounded shaken in a way I hadn't heard since his drinking days. "She's been watching me," he said without preamble. "Eve's been watching my apartment." My stomach dropped. He explained that his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a sweet elderly woman who'd taken a liking to Adam, had mentioned seeing a woman sitting in a car across the street multiple times over the past 2 weeks. Always the same blue sedan, always parked with a clear view of his building. Mrs. Chen had assumed it was a girlfriend, but when she described the woman, Adam knew immediately it was Eve. That evening, I drove over to stay with Adam for a while. We were sitting in his living room around 9 p.m. when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You look happy. I'm glad someone can be." The blood drained from his face. We both looked out the window and there it was, the blue sedan, parked under the streetlight with a clear view into his apartment. Adam wanted to go confront her, but I convinced him to call the police first. By the time the officer arrived 20 minutes later, the car was gone. The officer was sympathetic but explained that unless she directly threatened him or violated a restraining order, sitting in a public street wasn't technically illegal. He suggested Adam document everything and consider filing for a protective order if the behavior escalated. It escalated. Over the next few days, the texts continued from different numbers. Screenshots of Adam leaving his apartment. Photos of him at the grocery store. One particularly chilling message: "Recovery looks good on you. Shame if something disrupted it." That last one was the breaking point. Adam knew she was threatening his sobriety, and frankly, it was working. He'd started drinking coffee at all hours, barely sleeping, constantly checking over his shoulder. His therapist helped him file for a restraining order, but we all knew a piece of paper wouldn't stop someone as manipulative as Eve. Then Friday happened, and everything I thought I knew about this situation got turned upside down. I was having lunch with my friend Sarah, the one who's been learning Japanese, when she casually mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "Oh, speaking of language learning, remember that woman you told me about? Your brother's ex who claimed to speak 16 languages? Well, I was at the community center yesterday for my conversation group, and there was this woman there who matched your description perfectly. She was in the Spanish class, chatting with the instructor about being a polyglot." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "Are you sure it was her?" "Pretty sure. She was telling everyone about her Scottish heritage and how she'd learned Gaelic from her grandmother. The instructor seemed really impressed until she asked her to demonstrate some phrases. The woman got all flustered and claimed she was too emotional to speak her native tongue that day. I couldn't believe it. Even now, caught in her web of lies and facing a restraining order, Eve was still out there spinning news stories to new people. But that wasn't the worst part. Sarah continued, "The weird thing was, she kept asking about the other classes offered there. Specifically, she was really interested in the addiction recovery support groups. Asked a lot of questions about when they met and whether family members ever attended." My heart started pounding. "Did you tell anyone?" I mentioned it to the front desk staff. They said they'd keep an eye on things. I called Adam immediately. When I told him about Eve potentially scoping out recovery meetings, he went quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "She's not just stalking me. She's hunting." That night, Adam didn't go home. He stayed at our house, and we spent hours trying to figure out Eve's endgame. Was she planning to show up at his meetings and cause a scene? Was she hoping to trigger a relapse? Or was this all part of some elaborate plan to worm her way back into his life by positioning herself as someone who understood his recovery journey? The restraining order hearing is next Tuesday. Adam's lawyer says the stalking evidence strengthens his case significantly, but I can't shake the feeling that Eve's always been one step ahead of us. She's proven she can lie about anything, manipulate any situation, and disappear when it suits her. What terrifies me most is that she seems to know exactly how to hurt Adam where he's most vulnerable. His sobriety isn't just his greatest achievement, it's his lifeline. And somehow, I think she knows that threatening it is the one guaranteed way to get a reaction from him. The woman from AA that Adam's been seeing, her name is Rebecca, has been incredibly supportive through all this. She's been in recovery for 5 years and has dealt with her own share of toxic relationships. Yesterday, she told Adam something that's been stuck in my head. "People like your ex don't just want you back. They want to prove they can destroy what you've built without them." I think she might be right. And that scares me more than any of Eve's lies ever did. Update 4. The restraining order hearing was supposed to bring us peace. Instead, it opened a door to something far worse than we ever imagined. Adam got his protective order approved on Tuesday, thanks largely to the stalking evidence and those threatening texts. The judge was particularly disturbed by Eve's apparent interest in his recovery meetings. For 48 hours, we actually felt like we could breathe again. Eve would have to stay at least 500 feet away from Adam, his apartment, his workplace, and any AA meetings in the county. Wednesday evening, Rebecca called Adam in tears. Someone had contacted her sponsor, claiming to be Adam's sister, saying that Adam had relapsed and was being enabled by his new girlfriend. The caller provided specific details about their coffee dates, where they'd met, even what Rebecca had worn to their last meeting. The sponsor was confused because she'd met me before and knew the voice didn't match, but Rebecca was shaken. How did Eve know these intimate details about their relationship? That's when we realized the surveillance had been far more extensive than we'd thought. Thursday morning brought the real bombshell. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Is this Adam's sister?" The voice was calm, almost pleasant. "Who is this?" "This is Detective Morrison with the County Sheriff's Office. We've had some concerning reports about your brother that we need to discuss." My blood ran cold, but something felt off. "Can I call you back at the station to verify?" There was a pause. "Of course. Though I should mention, the reports involve potential violations of his probation terms. My brother isn't on probation." Another pause. "Ma'am, according to our records, Adam was arrested for domestic violence 3 months ago. The complainant was, I hung up and immediately called the real sheriff's office. No Detective Morrison. No reports involving Adam. No arrests. Eve was impersonating a police officer. When I told Adam, his hands started shaking. She's trying to make people think I'm dangerous. She's trying to isolate me from everyone who matters. But it got worse. That afternoon, Adam's boss pulled him aside. Someone had called the company's HR department claiming to be from a victim advocacy group, reporting that Adam had been harassing his ex-girlfriend despite a restraining order. They provided his full name, employee ID number, and detailed descriptions of alleged incidents that supposedly happened at work. His boss knew Adam well enough to smell bullshit, but HR was requiring Adam to take administrative leave pending an investigation. Eve had managed to attack his job without ever stepping foot near his workplace. Friday brought the call I'd been dreading. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. She contacted my ex-husband. My heart sank. Rebecca's ex-husband was the reason she'd gotten sober in the first place, an abusive relationship that had nearly destroyed her. She'd spent years rebuilding her life, and now Eve had somehow tracked him down and fed him information about where Rebecca lived, where she worked, who she was dating. He showed up at my apartment last night, Rebecca continued, drunk, angry, saying he'd heard I was dating some loser addict who was probably using me. He knew details about Adam that only someone close to our situation would know. The pieces clicked together in my mind. Eve wasn't just stalking Adam, she was systematically destroying his support system. His job, his sponsors' trust in his recovery, his relationship with Rebecca, even his family's peace of mind. She was isolating him from every positive influence in his life, creating chaos wherever she couldn't directly reach. But Rebecca surprised me. Instead of running, she got angry. I've been in recovery for 5 years, she told Adam when we all met that night. I've dealt with manipulative people before. This woman isn't going to scare me away from someone I care about. That's when Rebecca told us something that changed everything. She'd been thinking about Eve's behavior patterns, and something was bothering her. The level of detail Eve had about everyone's lives, the way she'd tracked down Rebecca's ex-husband, the impersonation of law enforcement, it suggested resources and skills beyond what they'd expected. My ex-husband mentioned something weird, Rebecca said. The woman who contacted him claimed she was calling from some kind of database company. She had information about me that went back years, addresses I'd lived at, jobs I'd held, even family members I hadn't spoken to in a decade. We all sat in silence as the implications sank in. You think she works somewhere with access to personal information? I asked. Adam's face went pale. She said she worked at a college as an engineer. But what if that was another lie? What if she worked somewhere with access to databases, background checks, personal records? The thought was terrifying. If Eve had professional access to personal information systems, she could track anyone, find anyone's vulnerabilities, impersonate authorities with enough detail to be convincing. Saturday morning, I called my friend who works in HR at the local hospital system. I described Eve without giving her name and asked if she sounded familiar. Oh my God, my friend said immediately. That sounds like Eve Patterson. She worked in our records department for about 6 months last year. We had to let her go for inappropriate access to patient information. She was looking up people who weren't her assigned cases. My stomach dropped. Did she have access to employee records too? All county hospital employees, their emergency contacts, insurance beneficiaries, family medical histories. She could have pulled personal information on half the recovery community in this area. When I told Adam, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said something that chilled me. She didn't find me by accident, did she? She targeted me specifically. I thought back to how they'd met, at a coffee shop near his first apartment after rehab, just weeks after he'd gotten out of treatment. She'd seemed so perfect, so understanding of his struggles. What if it hadn't been chance at all? What if Eve made a habit of targeting vulnerable men in recovery, using her access to medical and employment records to find the perfect victims? The restraining order suddenly felt like a flimsy piece of paper against someone who'd made manipulation and identity theft into an art form. And now, with Rebecca refusing to back down and me digging deeper into Eve's past, I had the sinking feeling we just escalated a game we didn't even know we were playing.